Hello everyone. In this session we will discuss about PCB thickness, standard PCB thickness. As we have discussed about the copper thickness, core thickness as well as prepreg thickness. So now we will discuss about first thing is two-layer standard PCB thickness. Okay, so the two-layer standard PCB thickness, we are going to use 1.5 mm. Just draw a little bit smaller so that we can add some more picture on top of it. So these are all a little bit theory things, so you just have to know about the things, no need to worry. So you just have to know about the things. So once we finish the theory part, we will start working on the tool. Okay, so this is all about the two-layer PCB, which we have one core and the two copper things we have. Okay, so here just take the thickness of the copper, thickness of the core. The core thickness I'm gonna use here will be 1.5 mm, and the copper I'm gonna use around 0.035 mm, and this another copper, the bottom copper, I'm gonna use 0.035 mm. So the in total that will become 1.57 mm. So the two-layer standard, that is 1.57 mm, will be the two-layer standard thickness. That is the standard two-layer PCB thickness. So this is also called as an ideal PCB thickness. But make sure this is not all the manufacturers with the 1.27 mm. But this is for two-layer. This is ideal PCB thickness. So what if you have a more than that? For example, if I use 2 mm core, or otherwise if I use 0.07 mm copper thicknesses, it will be more than 1.57. But make sure the standard the two-layer PCB thickness is 1.57, which is actually the ideal PCB thickness, we call it. So what if the PCB thickness is less than this? So less than this, we will just draw one more thing. So we just say one core we have of 1.5 mm. So and then we have the copper, which is very thin. So I will take less than that. Less than in the sense I am just using 0.017, that is 17 micron copper, which I am using. I'll just write it down here. So this is 0.017 mm, and the core, which we are still using 1.500 mm, and then the bottom copper is 0.017 mm. So the total will be, that is less than that. For example, this the total thickness will be, that is 1.5, that is 34, sorry, so 34 mm. So the ideal thickness is 1.57, and now we have the less compared to ideal thickness. That thickness is less, so we call it as thin PCB. So this particular PCBs are called as thin PCB, and 1.57 are all called as thick PCB, sorry, ideal PCBs. So if I take more than that, for example, if I take 0.07 mm, let's just draw it one more time. Just draw here. So this is the core, and then we have the copper on top of it and copper on bottom. So I'm going to use the top copper. Top copper thickness is 0.07 mm, and that is core, that I'm going to use 1.50 mm, and another one is 0.07 mm, that is 70 micron. That is also 2 ounce per square feet, the copper weight. So now in total it will become 1.64 mm. So the total the total PCB thickness, that is from the top to bottom including the copper layers, this top to bottom including the copper layer, so this is 1.64 mm, and this is the total from top to bottom, it is 1.534 mm, and this is 1.57 mm. If it is 1.57, it is ideal PCB. If it is less than 1.57, this is thin PCB. If this is more than 1.57, that will be a thick PCB. We can define that this way. These are the three different PCBs with respect to the layer stack-ups. So if you are using the core 1.5 common, but if you are varying the copper, so in this section I am varying the copper, that is 35 microns I am using, I am getting 1.57, so that is the ideal PCB thickness. If the thickness is less than that, maybe you are using the different core, smaller core also if you are using, that's fine. The less thickness core if you are using, that's fine. Here for an example I am using less copper thickness, so I am getting less than 1.57, which is thin PCB, and more than 1.57, that we consider as thick PCB, which is thin PCB. So in conclusion, so if your PCB thickness, the PCB thickness is equal to 1.57 mm, irrespective of it is 2 layer, 4 layer or 6 layer, so that we consider it as ideal PCB thickness, or you can say ideal PCB. So if the PCB thickness is more than or greater than 1.57, the conclusion is if it is greater than 1.57 mm, so we call it as thick PCB. So we more often see the thick PCBs in multi-layer and in high current related boards. If it is less than 1.57, if it is less than 1.57 mm, that all comes under thin printed circuit boards. So thin, more often we use low current PCBs, or the PCBs which the thickness is less than 1.5, and all comes under thin PCB. So if somebody asked in an interview, what about ideal PCB, what is thick PCB, what is thin PCB, with a reference, just take the ideal PCB as 1.57, a 2-layer PCB. So ideally 2-layer PCBs are all they do manufacture, most widely they do manufacture with a 1.57 thickness. Yes, irrespective of it is 4-layer or 6-layer or 2-layer. If it is more than 1.57, which is thick, and if it is less than 1.57 mm thickness, which is thin PCB.